In literary circles, this is called the denouement. Probably not a writer or director, and neither am I. But even if you're not playing an explicitly narrative game, like Curse of Strahd or like Critical Role or Dimension 20, there is an emergent narrative to even the most dungeon delve hex crawly of games. There's a reason that Lich of Serac is doing whatever he's doing, and Lolth is doing whatever she's doing for a reason. Why did the goblins steal people from the village to sacrifice to some dark god? As soon as you have a story, you and your players deserve a moment to come together to some closure as the player characters ride off into a sunset. I didn't used to care about this as a dungeon master. I spent all my effort at the end of a campaign focused on the big bad boss villain. And I still believe that's important. I wanted the players to feel like the year that they had spent in their real lives playing the campaign all led up to this moment. They've gone through a journey from level 1 to level 20. They've gathered all these allies, all of this magic items. They've lost friends and family along the way. And now they've come to face this final villain. But I also believe the more epic this person is, the more satisfying it is to finally go into that conclusion and see our heroes ride off into the sunset, to see that they've earned whatever peace they've finally gotten. And I cared even more once I started running my own campaign world. I needed to know what happened to them 30, 50, 100 years in the future. I wanted players that were new to see what the other players had done and to know that is another player and I can see their mark on the history. And there is a tradition of this in tabletop role-playing games. If you get the village of Hamlet, there are a bunch of higher level NPCs running around. Those are Gary Gygax's old players when he ran it. If you come into the hobby like I did with Forgotten Realms, you're in Shadowdale, and there's a bunch of lords and ladies of Shadowdale running around, and I'm willing to put money on it that those are Ed Greenwood's ex-players. And I wanted a part of that tradition for my players. These days, I always run a conclusion episode to my tabletop role-playing games, whether I'm running my own home sandbox world or I am running a pre-published adventure, like Curse of Strahd, Rime of the Frost Maiden, Kingmaker, or Rise of the Rune Lords. I always do this episode after the big boss has died. I need to know what happened during the big boss villain. Did anybody die? Is there any kind of reversals? Did something weird happen that I hadn't anticipated? I also want to talk to my players and find out, what are you interested in finding out about? What storylines did you feel like you didn't get a satisfying conclusion to? Is there anybody you want to check and see what happened to them afterwards? Sometimes they have some ideas about what they'd like to have happen to them, and I cannot promise them that those will happen. Hey, my character really loves Ismark. It'd be really great if we ran off into the sunset together. Okay, except that's not really consistent with Ismark's character. I also want to have a session where some players roll. They didn't come to me for just bedtime story time. Using my Curse of Strahd campaign as an example, I went to my players and found out who they wanted to talk to. They wanted to talk to Arena, of course, but also Ismark, Jenny Greenteeth, and Esmeralda. Some of those characters were more important than others, and some don't really deserve any player roles. They deserve some player interactivity. The players should get to go talk to them, but they're not going to change whatever they're doing. We're just going to come to some satisfying conclusion on how they ended their story. For example, Ismark is never going to leave Barovia. Even if he does want to leave, that's not who he is. He's going to stay behind. Same is true for some of the other characters. They're locked in stone. But that's not the case with Arena. Arena was a very dynamic character that had some character growth. I don't believe in a Dungeon Master PC where I am playing a character that has full agency in the party. They're a member of the party. But I do believe in an NPC that has some character growth as a result of some of the party actions and conversations that the party has with her. So what's going to happen to her? That's a perfect opportunity for me to have the players roll and come to some sort of conclusion interactively for her storyline. So I came up in secret with what would be involved in actually ending the Curse of Strahd. I like Gothic horror because it focuses on the evils of humanity and all those dark things in our nature. Within there's always a thread of hope. So I needed to give them a small chance that they could actually legitimately end the Curse of Strahd. For my Curse of Strahd, I determined that it was fundamentally focused on 3 people. Yes, Strahd is the main one. The dark powers are trying to torment, use Strahd, but Strahd really doesn't care about the curse. He's aware that he's immortal and he'll just get another chance to do this over again, and maybe next time I'll succeed. He is a narcissist, so he would not believe in his own ability to continue failing. I will do it next time. This is also a torment for both Sergei and Irina, or Tatiana originally. These two people keep getting spun into the wheel of Barovia over and over again. Sergei knows what's going on and has been a soul that has been presumably freed before and is aware that if this doesn't end, I'm just going to come back in this sword again. Tatiana, now Irina, is aware eventually that she is just going to get spun in this, that she's going to be tormented by Strahd forever. The players need to find some way to break that cycle. And for me, it was all focused around their understanding and their relationship with Irina. You need to find some way to get her to end Strahd. Strahd must be dead. You need to get closure between Irina and Sergei, and you need to get Irina, Tatiana's reincarnation, to go live her own life. So I came up with some criteria, a persuasion check, and some things that they needed to do to make that happen before the final battle. Number one, Irina has to survive. She went in the battle against Strahd because the players believed that she had a right to face her tormentor. I happen to agree with them, and she was there, and she did survive. Criteria number one has been satisfied. The next criteria, she needs to believe that the people of Barovia will be taken care of after she leaves. She was raised in the same household as Ismark. She's his adopted sister. So she would have a similar outlook to him. I gave her a wanderlust and she was a little bit more rash, but she still believes that she should do something and help these people. If Ismark died, she would stay behind because she believes in her responsibility to the people of Barovia. Ismark went down in the fight against Strahd. I leveled them up a bit, both Ismark and Irina, but they're still very low hit point and Strahd could one-shot them and in fact dropped Ismark unconscious. Ismark and Irina would have understood if the players used a spell slot instead of healing Ismark to kill Strahd, because Ismark would give up his life to end his sister's tormentor. That was justifiable in Ismark's mind, but the players didn't do that. They healed him to make sure that he lived through the story. They didn't know he needed to, they just did it because they liked him. Second criteria is now met. Ismark is alive. The third criteria is that they need to find some way to get Irina to realize who she is. She needs to understand that she's just going to get spun in this wheel again and again and again. And they did manage to get her memories restored throughout the rest of the story, that she realized that she is Tatiana reincarnated and more reincarnations, and that this is my ultimate fate. This is all going to happen again. It has all happened before. So I need some way out of this. It's a DC 30 to persuade her to do a number of things, and you can do some things to lower that check. Again, they did not know any of these criteria. The first one is Esmeralda needed to survive. Irina is a budding adventurer, and she is interested in going off and seeing the world. She doesn't want to become a toady to the adventurers, to these friends. She wants them as friends, but she really wants that friendship to be equal. And Esmeralda could offer an opportunity to become a monster hunter in her own right. Then they need to come with some way to solve the relationship between Sergei and Irina. They gave Irina the Sun Sword. I had decided she ever touches the Sun Sword, Sergei's soul will appear. And they will come to the understanding that we loved each other when we had different life experiences. And I'm now in the beyond. And I'm hoping, me being Sergei, I will get to actually pass on into whatever awaits me beyond the veil. And I want you, Irina, to go live your own life, to go be an individual. That's what your previous incarnation, Tatiana, would have wanted it for you, and that's what I want for you, I being Sergei. The last thing that they needed to do was try to convince her that she deserved a chance for her own life. She is a lawful good character. I care about alignment, but I also do not believe that it is a straitjacket on a character. If she believes that the Barovians are going to be taken care of, then she also believes that she has a right to live her own life. A lawful good person is still entitled to want things for themselves. They appeal to her independent wanderlust side of her personality, then they get advantage on the check for persuasion. How much do you have to give of not just one life, but lives before you have given enough? Don't you have a right to go and be yourself, to not be enslaved to a previous memory of a previous incarnation and to this cycle that keeps happening over and over again? They walk into the mists, and so does Arena. And on the other side, the players come out and they're sitting there waiting. And then you hear a loud crack as the mist falls apart and Arena walks out of the mist, and the Curse of Strahd is at an end. Now, I didn't have to care about an epilogue because we're never going to go back and play these characters again. The Curse of Strahd, Barovia, the mists are not part of my normal campaign world. But in my campaigns, my sandbox campaigns, I add on an epilogue. I run a homebrew sandbox style campaign, and it has now been 6 campaigns in this world, and there's about 50 years between each campaign. That means that there are now 300 years of player-made history. It is possible that a player playing a human character in campaign 1 is now playing in campaign 6 or 7 and wants to know what happened to them. So I need to come up with some way to create an epilogue that is satisfying to my players. It starts with the conclusion, but then I have to go further than that. I start with, what is the age, that the maximum age of this character? In a case of like an elf, they might still be alive. In case of a human, they've probably already expired. Then I need to figure out, did they make it to death from old age? These are, after all, adventurers. It is plausible that they wandered off and got themselves in trouble. For every level that the character made it, they have an additional chance to survive. A level 10 character has a 50-50 chance of making it to old age. A level 1 character has a 5% chance of making it to old age. That does make sense. You're a level 1, adventuring is a dangerous lifestyle. You're level 20, you will make it to old age. You have all the resources at your disposal. You're pretty much immune to disease or can cure it. You're not going to get poisoned. Even if you die, you could be resurrected. Your friends have those things at their disposal. You're going to make it to old age. Let's say that you didn't make it. Your character is going to expire at some point. I need to find out how many more years they lived. So I roll percentile dice and multiply whatever their max age is by that. And then I add it on to their current age so that they don't die before the adventure ended and ruin the continuity. For any future campaigns, I know exactly whether they're alive or dead. Then I can go through and figure out, how did they die? I will take the character and I will go find a monster that is 4-ish levels higher than whatever they are, a deadly encounter for that character. That's what killed them. Then I'll go talk to the player. Your character died fighting a kraken. Do you want to be involved in that story? Do you want to write it? You're free to go do so in collaboration with me. I'm always a little worried that a player is going to overblow what their character did, especially at like level 5. My character was a great general and was leading an army across like Alexander the Great. They're a level 5 cleric. That doesn't seem likely for that character. So I do take some editing control over what they do. If they pass it up and say, no, go ahead, I want to see what you come up with, then I will take it on myself and I will go determine what it is they do. So now I have determined or gotten from my players all these kind of side stories. So in the same session as the conclusion, I will narrate the epilogue very quickly and give a little bit of a blurb on how things unfolded in the decades, possibly centuries afterwards. After the death of the Fire Emperor Skegg, Brood Sigvason took control of the Cloud Palace. From there, on the back of giant rocks that were raised from the eggs that you rescued, the Gothi are masters of the Granite Isles. You've created lasting alliances with both the Frost Giants and the Dvergr. When age came upon you and started to creep into your arthritic bones, a kraken came to threaten the peace that you created on the Gothi Isles. You and your most loyal eldest warriors sailed out into the bay to fight the beast, and while you struck the killing blow, it dragged you down, a heroic death that is honored to this very day among the Gothi of the Granite Isles. Hadrun has created a temple on the cliffs of the Jornsgard Mountains dedicated to the god Cathartic and all of his domain. From all over the world, famous craftsmen come on a pilgrimage. Carpenters, blacksmiths, engineers, stonemasons, to study at the feet of the master and to honor their deity. Over the centuries, you dedicated yourself to the art of magical intelligence in creating golems. Your treatises have been read as far away as Uldia, and when you finally expire, your guardian golems continue to guard you for centuries afterwards. Every one of us has watched a show, played a video game, read a book, or watched a movie where they failed to nail the ending, for whatever reason that is. Maybe they ran out of time, maybe they ran out of money, maybe they didn't put enough thought into it, or maybe there were so many plot threads they couldn't possibly weave them all together in a satisfying conclusion for everyone. Whatever the reason is, it does kind of sour the taste of everything that went before it. It becomes the thing that everyone talks about. Yeah, it was good until the ending, and that kind of stunk. As Dungeon Masters, we don't have to do a conclusion or an epilogue. I didn't do one for years. And yes, my players kept coming back time and time again. But I did find that they were more ready to move on, and they felt more satisfied in the campaign that we had done once I did start buttoning everything up with a concluding session and an epilogue. Until next time, Dungeon Masters, remember you're a player too. Try to have some fun.
The stars will never fade. Never. They will burn till the end of time.